Resident Evil, arguably one of the most important game franchises ever created. And why do I consider it to be? Because of the impact it's had on pop culture in general. This humble survival horror video game is responsible for reviving the general public's interest and excitement towards the zombie subgenre, whether it be in video games, books, movies, or television. With the first Resident Evil film adaptation came many more movie deals, game sequels, spin-offs, books, and pretty much anything else on whatever media platform you can think of. With the newfound franchise success that Capcom was looking for, came a whole slew of other contenders wanting to jump on that money train, creating a brand new fad in horror action entertainment that would continue to this day. But that's not what we're mainly going to explore in this video series. What I want to focus on is the impact that Resident Evil has had on me. Resident Evil is the series responsible for me getting back into video games when I was a teenager, and has helped me to understand so much, from setting and creating a proper atmosphere to intelligent while at times frustrating game design. So please join me on this journey as we take a look at all the major Resident Evil game releases and explore almost everything there is to explore about the concept, creation, and impact of a video game. In the end, hopefully you can come to understand why this series, at least in the early days, is my favorite video game franchise of all time. Back in the late 90s, Capcom wanted to make a Haunted Mansion game to be on the PlayStation. Shinji Mikami was brought on board to head the project and make it very similar to, or if not, a complete remake of the 1989 movie licensed game called Sweet Home that was never released outside of Japan due to its content being considered highly graphic and gruesome at the time. The game was released for the Nintendo Entertainment System and takes place in a mansion haunted by many forms of ghouls and monsters. The main plot is based around a team of documentary filmmakers who set to recover several missing artifacts from the mansion, only to have to end up fighting for their survival upon discovering the nightmare that awaited them. Throughout the random encounters the game throws at you, you are then moved from a top-down perspective to a first-person one, as a part of a general turn-based RPG aesthetic, and this was going to be the main gameplay design for Resident Evil along with the Haunted Mansion setting. But further into development, the team decided to go with the fixed camera angles the series is well known for, inspired by the original Alone in the Dark. Resident Evil is what the franchise is called only in America and Europe. In Japan, it was settled from the early stages that it would be called Biohazard, and to this day is still what the games are called over there. It was later revealed that a music band and a video game already had the Biohazard name. So Capcom decided to run a small contest between its workers to see which name people would like the most. The marketing crew settled on Resident Evil because they felt it fit the mansion setting of the game. I don't think the franchise would still be as big as it is today with a name like Biohazard all over the world. Resident Evil just has a nice ring to it, even though it makes less and less sense as the series would go on. The game's overall setting takes place within the boundaries of a top-secret facility disguised as an imposing mansion, in the outskirts of the fictional small town of Raccoon City that we only later get to explore in other Resident Evil titles, such as 2 and 3. The story of Resident Evil is surprisingly fleshed out. It's here where we establish the series' most popular and reoccurring characters, such as Jill Valentine and Chris Redfield. You have been sent there along with the Alpha team of STARS as part of an ongoing investigation having to do with brutal murders surrounding the area, known in the world of Resident Evil as the Arklay Mountains. However, Bravo team had already been sent there but disappeared due to unknown reasons. Unknown until... You and a handful of your teammates are then forced into a completely isolated and enclosed mansion only surrounded by the pitch black forest and hungry undead dogs. The story varies depending on if you choose to play as Chris or Jill, and each campaign has their own alternate story paths that can be triggered if you progress through the game in a specific order, which can also trigger multiple endings, adding to the replay value of the game. The more you explore, the more the game rewards you with story and world building. Stuff like being able to pick up and read documents that contain important information, ranging from local newsletters reporting on the gruesome events to what happened to the people staying at the house. All this, along with environment clues such as bloodstains on the walls and floors, contribute to telling a story and building a universe of its own that becomes very morbid but at the same time very likable to fans of horror and psychological thrillers. However, it's not all peaches and cream, because no matter how good the world building is, there will always be one thing that will take you completely out of the game.
I'm sorry, Jill.
I didn't know that was going to happen.
The voice acting and dialogue is fucking atrocious.
Oh, Barry!
That was too close. You were almost a Jill sandwich.
You're right.
And it completely clashes and contradicts the mood and atmosphere of the game. I mean, say you're reading the researcher's will. In it, he describes how most of his friends and colleagues have been infected and already turned into zombies. He explains, as he is writing this letter to his wife, that the undead is clawing and pushing on his door to try and devour him. He tells us how he already knows that he's become infected, and because of this, has chosen to commit suicide, and closes this letter by asking his wife to forgive him, but as well understand what he's about to do. That is some pretty heavy-handed and depressingly beautiful shit right there. But with that, you also get,
Oh! I can't believe it! Are you okay?
Yeah, so much for him. We got to the root of the problem.
So as much as I love this world, the acting in this game is amongst the most unintentional, funniest acting ever in a video game. Thankfully, Capcom gave them a bigger budget for the second one, and they were finally able to get some real voice actors in there. It still comes off a bit cheesy in the second game, but the performances greatly outweigh the ones found in here. If you're looking for fleshed out characters, you won't find any of that. Characters range from having a one-dimensional personality to zero personality, and if it's at all possible, I would say that on occasion, the personality meter goes into the negatives, with how robotic and flat some line delivery can be.
Oh no, I'm alone. But why are you asking?
Some people might say that a story in video games doesn't matter, but if the creators are going to go through the trouble of presenting us with one, then it's something that they intended for us to pay attention to, so it most certainly is warranted to critique it. Even though the game is extremely outdated on a lot of its elements, I personally really love the mansion, and I'm inclined to say that I prefer the overall architecture of this one over the remake. I know, I'm gonna get crucified for saying that, but while the environments are definitely more fleshed out and extremely detailed in the GameCube remake, I personally feel that the pre-rendered backgrounds to the original add a sort of character, and I'll go over more details on that when it comes for me to explore the GameCube version, so I'll focus on the environments for this game. Almost every room you come across is well lit, and you have a pretty good grasp of where the corners are in each area. People often feel like the less light there is, the more ominous and threatening an environment can become. But in my mind, if you really want to isolate and make someone feel completely alone, what better way than to light the entirety of that room, emphasizing its lifelessness and apathy towards you. When you're by yourself in an area like the main hall where all there is to interact with is the typewriter, you do feel completely helpless. Even though it's bright as day in there, the house has no sense of warmth and comfort, but instead a detachment from you. The house doesn't have any natural flow, so every room not only has a detachment from you, but naturally they feel detached from the rest of the house as well, creating within the player a disorientation, which adds more to feeling helpless and scared. Now, the lack of details and home decorations might be because of the limited technology back then, but hey, it still worked. As you slowly discover what's behind every door, you progress through the game, either finding ammo and supplies, or enemies that have been lingering as to clues to what happened before the STARS members got there to investigate. Resident Evil is known for being the series with one of the most memorable and best soundtracks to video games, and this is where it all started. Out of all the zombie moans from every game, this is where you'll find the creepiest sounding ones out of them all. Having them be all drawn out like that, some people might think it's silly, but I personally find that very disturbing and unsettling. And having it be accompanied by music certainly helps, but I think the sounds are scarier when they're in complete silence. The music is fantastic in helping to set the mood. I don't think it'd be a classic Resident Evil game without that awesome ambient score. It defines which game it's from, and is the focal point in every environment. You can feel the dread and anguish. You can feel the insanity. But also feel at ease and safe. Music is one of the most important things when you're making something, whether it be a film or video game. It should be memorable and fit with what you're trying to convey, and although I'll never understand why the credits sound like this, I still think overall they perfectly captured and established what this and any subsequent Resident Evil installments should sound like. Trying to survive goes hand in hand with what you have to defend yourself with. During the game, you can obtain an assortment of weapons ranging from a simple handgun to a bazooka. And while the technology isn't there to give these things the punch they deserve, it's still satisfying as hell to headshot zombies with a shotgun. Basically, if you choose to play as Jill, you've pretty much chosen the easy mode of the game, since you are able to store more items in your inventory, and you can also get the highly useful bazooka in her campaign. Whereas if you play as Chris, you can carry less items, and while the flamethrower makes a brief appearance, there is no incredibly helpful bazooka to be found, and I believe your hitbox has a wider range, meaning enemies can hit you easier than Jill because of your bulky steroid-induced size. The technical design portion of the game is pretty awful. While the handgun has a pretty long range, sometimes because of the heavily pixelated aesthetic, you have no idea where exactly you're pointing, and can end up losing very valuable ammo while doing so. Trying to turn your character to aim becomes such a hassle as well. When your enemy is straight ahead and that's the only direction you should be pointing at, there's really no problem. It's only when there's more than one enemy at multiple angles, when turning while aiming your gun becomes not an option, just due to the fact that turning is so fucking slow. It's better to stop aiming, turn your character, and then get back to pointing when you have to fend off many monsters. But when you aim, your character has to get back into position, and sometimes there's no time for that, and you either end up receiving damage or being killed when you feel that it wasn't your fault at all. Since recovery invincibility for you is virtually non-existent, enemies can inadvertently corner you into a damage loop, so your character ends up receiving punch after punch without you being able to at least trigger the aiming animation to fire back at them. I fucking hate the hunters in this game, because not only are they the biggest offenders when it comes to this crippling feature, but they have the longest recovery time I've probably ever encountered in an enemy from a video game. Because of this, and due to the fact that sometimes just running away is better than confronting the game's enemies, if you ever want to put on a good action game, this is definitely not it. And I don't mind at all the tank controls that so many people complain about, but here they seem especially crippling without it feeling intentional by the game developers. I will admit though, sometimes you would get all the way down to 0 health, or in danger mode, and you have no supplies to heal yourself with, but you still make it by defeating the creature that was about to kill you. And when that happens, it's one of the best and most satisfying feelings a video game can give. Puzzle solving is another element that has become a staple of Resident Evil, and pretty much all subsequent puzzles in future installments were inspired in some form or fashion by the ones found in this game. Though the ones found here aren't necessarily the most difficult puzzles found in the series, they can definitely be considered charmingly clever and surprisingly satisfying once you've figured out the solution, especially to the more complex ones. Trying to strategize your inventory can become a form of a puzzle itself, because of how very little you are able to store and carry around with you. Thinking about which items are where and how much storage space you'll need in the future adds another layer and genre of difficulty to the game other than just killing the enemies you come across. This is definitely a very unforgiving game, and even though I've complained about the enemies and technical aspects, I highly appreciate that because living in an age of autosave and constant hand-holding, the old has become surprisingly refreshing and unique, favoring challenging the player rather than pandering to them. The Dark Souls series and all its spin-offs are an exception to this because they understand that it's more satisfying to beat a game that has kicked your ass so many times than to just play through one only to forget about the adventure the next morning. It's debatable if Resident Evil is the first game to ever be dubbed survival horror, but it was definitely amongst the very first ones, and is responsible for influencing many successful franchises in the genre, Silent Hill being one of them. The Japanese version of the game contains more explicit content, like having more shots of blood and gore during the intro, as well as a smoking Chris Redfield. The original has sold over 2,750,000 units worldwide, and has spawned many other versions that have been ported onto different playable platforms, such as on the Sega Saturn, a PC version, and my personal favorite version of the game, the Nintendo DS port. The Director's Cut along with the DualShock version have sold just as successfully, and there was also going to be a Game Boy Color version, but was never released due to how poor the quality was. Footage of this scrapped version has been leaked, and you can look it up on YouTube. And as a final bit of information, the game was put into the Guinness World Records Gamers Edition 2008 for the worst game dialogue ever. Shinji Mikami is often credited as the creator of a genre, one that as time goes on becomes more and more difficult to sustain and recreate, with consumers being more inclined to prefer a fast-paced action shooter, rather than a slow and methodical immersive experience. For all its goofy and outdated forms of presentation, Resident Evil is one of those games that captures a certain charm to the early days of 3D gaming. The attention to detail and work spent on it can certainly be felt, and I will always consider it to be one of the most immersive and atmospheric games I have ever played.